Welcome to part one of our B17-G Flying Fortress build. Yes, time to crack on with a new build, the B-17 Flying Fortress. I have never built a Flying Fortress in my life. It's something I've wanted to build since I was, I don't know, a teenager. Certainly, it captured my imagination. Just the very word, Flying Fortress, you know, bristling with guns. It captures your imagination as a kid. And I've never built one. And I got this kit because I needed to scratch that itch at some point. I have done a first impressions of it, and I will leave a link for it in the text underneath this video. So if you want to go and understand more deeply what's in the kit and what you get from Airfix, then you can do that. But yes, it is now time to build it, and it seems to be everyone's building Flying Fortresses at the moment, and it wasn't my plan to build this at this moment in time. I had planned to build it this year before I knew about the TV program that's just come out. So this was part of my plan, and it was actually my subscribers that asked me to prioritize this over what I was planning to build. So for you guys, you subscribers that asked for it, here it is. We're gonna build the version that you see on the artwork here with the big yellow tail, and it's called Milk Round, I think, or something like that. Not sure. So it's primarily silver, and doing aircraft in silver can be very, very difficult. So we will have to see how we get on. It's also turrets, and I've just had a run-in with an aircraft with turrets that didn't quite go to plan. So I'll be interested to see if I can improve on that this time. So yeah. Should be, from having fingered through the parts when I was washing them, should be a really nice build. So we get, as I look at this, we get a skill level 3 build, and it tells us that the scheme that I've chosen is 4337756 Milk Wagon, not Milk Round, 708th Bomb Squadron, 447th Bomb Group, 8th Air Force, United States Army Air Force, Royal Air Force Rottlesden in Suffolk in England, 1945. So this is just before the end of the war, and just before they actually go back home. I think it was September 45. These guys are back in the US. So yeah, a nice end of war model. Not often I do end of war stuff, actually, one way or another. Not through design, just the way things turn out. So right. Let's get on with the build, and the first thing we do is give everything a good wash to make sure that we've not got any chemicals on there. Make sure you know, these things get handled in the factories, they can pick up dirt and all sorts, and I generally believe that it does actually improve your paint adhesion as well. Right, let's do that then. Welcome to the Model Kit Stuff B17 group build. This is my build, and there's going to be a lot going on as we go through this with all of you. There is many of you out there building along with the B17s, and I am majorly chuffed that so many people want to build along. So I am going to be tackling this, the Airfix 172 scale B17-G Flying Fortress, and the version that I am going to be doing is the one on the box art that you saw in the titles, which is this one here, which is the Milk Wagon 708th Bomb Squadron, 447th Bomb Group, 8th Air Force, United States Army Air Force, Royal Air Force, Rattlesden, Suffolk, England, 1945. And we get basically a bare metal aircraft with olive areas to stop the sunlight flashing the people in the aircraft, and then we get the yellow markings and the big black V and the green stripes and stuff. So yeah, that's the one we're doing. It has a nice backstory, and yeah, I think it's quite a cool looking model. I have never built a B17 before, so this is a first for me. And I wanted to just say a few words about the build and about some of the aftermarket and so on and so forth. So I've read all the comments that people left about the B17 group build, and we've got a range of people building. We've got people who have got 30 B17s in their stash and we're just looking for an excuse to build one of them. And then we've got people who have never built anything this big. We've got some people that are new to the hobby, some people that are returning to the hobby, some people that have never built an aeroplane before but are accomplished armoured fighting vehicle modelers. We've got some people that are really daunted by this. We've got people who've never built who've built aircraft but never built a B17. So I'm gonna try during this build to cater for everybody, from never picked up a model kit before to experienced, and so we're gonna be looking at doing everything. So even when I replace something like the engines, for example, I'll still build them up and show you how I go around tackling those and getting the best out of them. So I hope that some of you that are building along will be able to get something out of that. So what am I doing in the way of aftermarket? Well, I'm focusing on the exterior. I came to the decision that anything in the interior is going to be so difficult to see that it's pointless spending money on replacing what the kit already provides. So what I have done though is I've looked at some of the areas that could be improved. So I've started with some resin wheels. These are from a company called Armory Models Group. They're in Ukraine, and they've made quite a nice set of resin tires here. Means that I'm not going to have to worry too much about putting the tires together, getting rid of the seam, and then putting the tread back in and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, very, very nice. Also comes with a set of masks, but it doesn't come with any instructions of any type. So we will have to try and work out how we're going to fit those a bit closer to the time. But that gives us all three of the wheels and tires that we require, so that's excellent. I've got a set of propellers, and what these do, I love the Quick Boost products and I bought a couple of them. What these do is they're really, really thin, so they're going to be less chunky than the kit ones. Now the kit ones I've looked at and they're fine, they're really nice, but these I've just got that extra level of finesse and got really nice casting around the hubs that they go into, and it even provides a little tool so you can get the angle right when you glue it in. So a nice touch. So we've got the propellers there as well. As I've already mentioned, we've got replacements for the 4 engines. These are, again, resin, and there is lots and lots of detail on here that you just can't quite get in the plastic moulding process. Be interesting to see how much of an uplift these give to the actual engines we've got. And of course, there's cowlings going around them and stuff, so it'll be a little bit difficult to see some of the elements of this, but it's quite a visual focus, the propellers and the engines. So I wanted to do a little bit, and they're not expensive, they're dirt cheap. So we've got those as well. From the Edward Brassing range, we've got the turbochargers there. So they're just going to elevate what we've got in the kit. Again, the kit ones are all perfectly good. If you want to build this out of the box, you really can. It is very nice. And then finally, I've got some Montex masks, which cover off some of the main markings, but we might have other decals as well. So I will be going through the decal process, because it's not got, for example, the milk wagon logo and all the milk bottles and things that we'll be putting on, but it does include masks for the canopy and the glazing. But what I will do is I'll show you how to make your own if you can't go to that expense. But yeah, we have a full set of Montex masks as well. And that's all. The rest of it is in the kit. Now, in the spirit of talking to those people who have not built a model before, the first thing that you need to do is wash your parts, and you've just seen me doing that. And these are them here, just freshly dried. And what washing the parts does is, not only does it take any grease, any fingerprints from being handled in the factory, and mold release and ejector pin grease and all that sort of stuff, not only does it get rid of that, but washing them also sort of gives the plastic a sort of a matte finish, and I truly believe it does help a little bit with paint adhesion. Anyway, I think it's good practice. There is occasions when I've gone, I can't be bothered, and you get a lot of separating of paint. Sometimes you're lucky and it doesn't happen, sometimes you're unlucky and it does, particularly with acrylics, where on a surface that's a little bit greasy, it's sometimes difficult to break the surface tension of your acrylic paints, especially if you're brush painting. So now these are all cleaned and dried, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them all into individual bags, and then I store them in this tray. I call this my build tray. And what this does is it stores all the parts, and it's not as bulky as the big box. I can have everything in its bag. I write the letter on the bag of the sprue, and then it's easy to find. And then as we start going through this, some of the sub-assemblies might be stored in here. I've got little storage boxes that I use. Let me just show you one. So things like this, you can see there's tissue paper in them. So sub-assemblies, small parts that are cleaned up and not quite ready to be used, they'll all go into a container with a lid on, so we don't lose anything, and they can sit inside this as well. This is quite a large model, so as it gets built up, it won't fit in here anymore, and so that'll be put somewhere safe separately. I have space at the back of my desk for part build models, so we'll do that. But otherwise, all the sprues will be in here. When I'm building, I might, if I'm doing quite an intensive day of building or something like that, I might get the sprues out and put them in a sprue store, but I'll be talking about that later on. But this is how I store it. This then gets, this is a drawer, so it goes into a drawer unit and gets put away. So those are my basic points to start with. So the next thing we need to do to get on with this build is to have a look at the instructions. So let's do that and go through them. Okay. For all model building projects, whether they are big or small, the first thing you always do is go through the instructions, get familiar with them, and that will help you construct in your mind the way to build it. Now, if you're fairly new to modeling or new to large projects, then my recommendation is you go with the flow of the instructions. The problem is, however, that sometimes model companies design their instructions to help you build the model, but don't really think about how the modeler is going to paint it. And so that's some of the considerations that we have to think about as we go through the instructions. Now, if you're doing a really large project like a large ship, then I have a video on it on how to organise your instructions. If you've got loads of photo etch and things like that, then I have a video that explains how I go about it. You can put it on a spreadsheet, you can do all sorts of things. But this is a medium-sized project, large for a small-scale aircraft, but as projects go, it's not going to be huge. So I'm not going to worry about spreadsheets. We can just mark this up. So the first thing that I'm looking for as I go through the instructions is, do I understand what the instructions are telling me? And have I got any build options? So if I've got build options, I want to understand them and make those decisions up front. So as I look through this, there's these symbols with the little question mark on, and that's options. So option to put it on its stand. If you want to put it on its stand, you can still have the landing gear down in flight. But that might give you a couple of options, like, do I want to have the landing gear up or down? And do I want to use the propellers, or do I want to simulate the propellers spinning and put discs of acetate on instead? So, which is a common way of doing it. I've done it a couple of times. The other way is to cut your propellers short, so you just see stubs and it looks like you're just seeing the middle spinner because it's moving so fast. I've done that way as well. Both have their merits. I'm not going to be putting this on a stand. I'm going to have it on its landing gear. The other thing we're looking for is any sub-assemblies. So here, for example, we've got a turret being built up. This is the underneath turret that's slung underneath there, but it gets mounted into the fuselage before the two fuselage halves go together. So what I'll want to do is I'll want to build that and see if that can be installed afterwards. So some sub-assemblies we may want to build right at the start. So this might be the first thing we do, is build this bull turret here. So that's definitely assembly that we want to have a look at. So I think that's our first sort of major sub-assembly that we might want to look at. This can be done right at the start and put to one side. So I'm just going to mark that page. And we see we've got the tail gets clamped together there. So that's worth thinking about. And then the wings are built up, and you know what, they could be treated as a sub-assembly as well. So we could build up the wings separately if we wanted to. And then we've got the tail sections, our sub-assemblies. Then once the wings are on, we're adding various bits. It makes more sense to me to paint the aircraft with the wings on, because it means that you've done any filling and stuff that you need to do. So I'm not really seeing a major benefit to building the wings up first. The engines are sub-assemblies, and we could build those up and then install them later. The the problem is we install the engines, then we put these rings on, and we've got then we've got the cowling, and the cowling's painted a different colour. So for me, we can do that after painting as well. So it does give us options for these things to be open or closed. Now I assume that they are open in flight and closed when landed. But what you could do is do like a museum version where you've got things open, but you're also showing things that would be open in flight as well. So quite often museums will set things up like that. I'm not going to. I'm going to show it on the ground in a neutral position. So I'll have the rings closed. So that's open, that's closed. So I'm going to cross that out because we're not going to do that one. You can see I've already been through and crossed out the landing gear closed, because that's also something we're not going to do. Also, I'm going to have my bomb bay open, so more to build, more fun, you get to see inside. And then we've got the tail end section here. The rear gunner is a sub-assembly and it's clear parts. So we need to think about that, because you could paint the aircraft and then attach that on if the fit's good, or you can attach that on and paint the aircraft, in which case you've got some careful masking to do around the guns. So my gut feel is that we build the guns up, then paint this, and then put the guns in, and then paint the aircraft and then attach it on afterwards. But the fit has to be perfect for us to do that. So this is also a sub-assembly that we might want to look at. And then we've got the nose gun here, and the underneath nose gun, that's a sub-assembly. That has a cowling that goes around it, so we've got to think about the fit of that as well. So that's worth looking at. And we've got a roof gun here. So we need to think about that when we're painting and masking. And then we've got, right at the end of the build, the canopy going on, and more turrets and more guns. And this is what I mean about manufacturers not thinking about the paint process so much. Do you really want to paint this with all these guns sticking out? All questions that we will answer as we start going through the build. Now, my general approach will be to try and get the interior all done and do any sub-assemblies in the interior, so that when we're painting the interior with one colour, we can paint all the components that need to be that colour. The reason I do that is it reduces build time and you're more efficient with your painting. Then we will get the aircraft to a point where we can paint the outside bit, and we will leave the propellers off, the landing gear off, the engines off, and question mark over some of these canopies and what have you, because I would like anything that's designed to rotate to be able to rotate. So we'll have to have a look at that and come to some decisions. But yeah, lots of things to think about. Now, another thing to do is to remind yourself of your aftermarket parts. So what I want to also do in the instructions is mark off any points where I've got aftermarket. So we're pretty good on all the internals, but I do have, where are we? Quite far into the build before we do aftermarket, because it's all sort of external stuff. So at step 87, I've got aftermarket. So I'm just going to put an A in there for aftermarket, and that'll remind me that I've got engines to look at. Then I've got wheels, so I put an A in there when we start looking at the wheels. Have I missed the turbochargers? I think I have. There you go, that's the turbochargers, so we'll put an A in there for the turbochargers, and then propellers is right at the end here. So I've already crossed out that because that's all replaced. So that's my aftermarket marked up. The decals, well, that's on our paint scheme here, and we know that we've got masks, so I'm not going to forget that we've got masks, so I don't need to mark that up particularly. In the way of decals, there are some decals that are not covered off by the Montex set. So we've not got like the Milk Wagon logo and stuff, as I've already mentioned, but we've also not got the big black V, which is underneath and on top of the wing. So we will have to mask that off because I want to paint that rather than use the decal. It will just look at that bit better. But I do think, no, we don't have the green stripes either. Now, in this kit, the green stripes are a decal, but putting a decal over this area here, and then that goes out over the fuselage. I'll show you on my fuselage half. Getting a decal to sit correctly down there, and then meet up and overlap, that could be challenging. You risk having the decal stretch over there, and then you having a space between the decal and the model. You risk it gathering up, you risk it not sitting properly. So for me, it will be better to mask that off and paint that on as well. So these are all things that we're going to tackle as we go along. Now, I'm also going to do some paint effects. So not only are we going to look at how we do the bare metal, which means I'm going to want to play around before we actually do anything. So this Hurricane is going to help me with that task. I'm going to use this for doing a little bit of experimenting with metal finishes. I don't do them very often. I've got a new set of paints coming. I've ordered them 2 weeks ago, still not got them direct from MIG Ammo, but I have some metal paints coming that I want to try out. So we'll be having a play with them and looking at how we do effects with that. So lots of things to think about there. We've got the challenge of painting yellow, one of the more difficult colours to paint, along with white and what have you. And I also want to do a little bit of chipping, so particularly around the area, engine areas where we might get some chipping, and on some of the green and bits and pieces like that. Because we're painting a lot of the decals, that allows us to do that. So that'll be fairly cool as well. And then we want to do some basic weathering. So be having a look at some period photographs to think about how we pick out the panel lines, and also things like exhaust staining and streaking dirt and that sort of stuff. So we'll be covering all of that off in the build as well. What I'm not going to be doing though is adding lots of rivets. So you can see here that there is no rivets on here, but when you look at period photographs of the bare metal ones, you cannot really see the rivets. So I'm not going to be adding rivets. We might be scoring out some panels and stuff. There's a bit of soft moulding in places that we need to tackle, and what have you. But in the main, you've seen what I've got. We're building it from the box with a little bit of aftermarket, and we'll just have a mess around and see what we can do with her. So I'm really excited to do this because I've been wanting to build a flying fortress since I was a teenager, and now finally getting to do it with lots of you guys. So let's get on with the build. Oh, before we start, I nearly forgot to say, on the outside of my box, I've got a full list of paints that Airfix recommend. They're the Humbrol paints. I know they're not everyone's taste, but what I like to do is write down all the paints and decide what paints I'm using for those colours. So the ones in circles are the ones that are for the exterior of the aircraft. And I'm using a combination of Humbrol enamels, and I'm going to be trying the A-stand aluminium. I've not tried the A-stand paints before, so it'll be interesting to see how they go. I've also got some primers and various other bits and pieces to go with them. I'll also be using some ICM paints, and I might even be using some Humbrol acrylics as well. So I've got a range of different paint systems we're going to be playing with on this, and that's just the main block colours. That's not including anything we might do with weathering and stuff like that thereafter. So we'll be doing a combination of things. We'll be airbrushing with enamels, we'll be airbrushing with some ICM paints. We'll be doing brush painting with both enamels and acrylics as well. So a lot of these colours are for the interior, so we'll see how they go. I've even got a MIG acrylic in there as well to replace the natural wood that's suggested. So let's crack on with the plastic bits and getting some building done. Right, here we are with our instructions and our first steps, which are dealing with the cockpit interior. And when we get down to here, it's asking us to put some decals on. One that says do not remove from the aircraft. And I thought, that's a strange thing to have on a seat. So I did a quick Google and looked at B17 cockpits, and there appears that there was some form of yellow cushion, or maybe it's some form of rubber dinghy deflated that also doubles as a cushion or something, but it's quite a bright yellow, and Airfix are asking you to paint this in dark green, which is a colour that's running throughout the cockpit. So that means there's no cushion on there. So I dug the parts out, and sure enough, we've just got a very simple bucket seat there. So there's two ways we can go with this, because it's hardly going to be seen. You could just paint the front face of this yellow before you put the decals on, so that when you peer through the glass it'll give you that appearance. Or you could make a set of cushions to go in there, and I'm sort of minded, just for the devilment of it, to do that. So there's two seats, and both of them appear to have this cushion on, so that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to make a cushion. So making a cushion shouldn't be too difficult. We're going to use a product called Green Stuff. I've not used this for a couple of years now. I think the last time I used it was on the DasWorks U9 when we built that, but I'm fairly sure I've not used it since then. So I'm just going to take a small amount. So if you've not used this before, it's basically a two-part mix. So a hardener and a base, so a bit like Milliput. In fact, a lot like Milliput. but it has a more sort of plasticky type of feel to it. And it's called green stuff because when you mix it together, blue and yellow of course, and it goes green. So what you have to do, just like Millie put, is mix the two halves together, and then it becomes quite pliable as it warms up. You have to work with it quite quickly. I understand, I've never tried it, I've got to be honest, but I understand to keep your fingers clean and your work surface clean, it's recommended to use a bit of flour, but I've got to say I've never done that. So just got to mix it together, make it go green. Now the question is, do I have 2 G sprues, because I can only see one. No, one of the seats broke off in the bag, didn't it? So I'm going to have to fish the other one out. Right, I'm going to mix this up and then I'll come back to you. So I have mixed my green stuff up. It is now green, and I'm going to roll it out. I'm using the back of a pallet for this because it does get quite sticky, and I don't want to make a mess of my cutting mat. Okay, so next thing to do is cut out some of this. So I'm going to just cut a little edge. That's going to give me a sharp edge, and I can scrape that away. You can see how messy this is. And we'll get the width first. So we want the inside width, which is that. Cut a nice straight edge. Is I'm just taking a small amount and pushing it into the places that we want to make this cushion, and then we can sort of work with it and smooth it out. So I'm going to use a little cocktail stick there just to smooth it out, and then I have this old knife blade that I use for trimming it away, and just make it look the way we want, really. It's very malleable, so it's easy to work with. What you don't want to do is get it on your cutting mat, because it does make a bit of a mess. So that's why I'm using the back of this pallet. And you do have to work relatively quickly because it goes hard surprisingly quickly. As it cools, it goes hard. So periodically you might want to roll it up in your hand again. Once this is hard, you can file it, you can sand it, but because it's such a small area, what we want to do is just shape it. Now, I'm no expert with green stuff. I don't use it a lot. Some people are absolute artists with this stuff. I am not one of them. Right, now to smooth it, we need to get the knife wet. So I'm just going to get a bit of water and then we can do that. So now I've got the amount that I want in. Just by wetting my blade, I can go in and smooth this and manipulate it, spread it out, even it out. Should have my magnifying glasses on really, because this is quite a small job. Oh, that's better. Once you've got it patted down into the places that you want, you can just start trimming it away, shaping it and getting it where you want. It's quite good fun actually. There we go. So I've got that sort of nice and smooth, and I can put some little creases in to emulate it being a cushion. And there you have a little cushion in there, which we can paint up and put our decals on, and it just adds a little bit to it. You're not hardly going to see it, but it was a bit of fun. So I'll do the other one, and then we can start looking at proper construction. Right then, so step one, and we need G8, which is this part here, which as I'm removing it I can see I've got a bit of flash or heavy seam on there, so that's that. And then F5, which is this floor pan here, which they have painted black, and as I understand it, it's a wooden floor with a rubber anti-slip coating matte floor or something put in. So let's trim these off. So for those of you that are new to modelling, what we'll do is we'll just show you how I go about cleaning these parts up, but I'm not going to do that on all these parts. I'm just going to show you the basics as we go. So we've just trimmed that down. We've got seam that we need to clean up to ensure that we get a good fit. If you don't clean it off, then as you build it up, the fit gets slacker and slacker and more misshapen, and then when you come to put the fuselage together, you're going to have big gaps and stuff. So there's two methods you can use for that. You can either sand it with a sanding stick, such as this, and go in and take that back, which is nice and easy to do on these big areas, but where you've got some smaller areas you can't get in. So actually I find the best approach is to use the back edge of a knife. Number 11 blade is quite good because it's narrow, and we'll get into areas quite quickly and small areas with ease. There you go, and you just pare it off. And what we want to do is get the part nice and tidy and sharp as the designer intended the part to be, and you're just getting rid of the limitations of the moulding. There we go. I see, even where we've got this sort of flashy seam, it's simply not a problem. We've got a little nib there from the sprue gate. So the sprue gate is this part here that connects the sprue to the part, and that little bit there is called the gate, and that's what you leave behind when you cut it off, and that's called a nib or a nub, and we just need to take those off. So that's nice and sharp now. Now I actually have some dedicated scrapers which are a little easier to use, so I'm going to use them. I haven't seen these for ages. I'm not even sure that you can still get them, but you can certainly make your own with a little bit of photo etch. Tamiya photo etch is excellent for making these things. There we go. So that's quickly cleaned up. And we can just go around and make sure it's nice and clean and we've got no scruffy bits of plastic left. And then we can test fit that. So that's going to go into our floor upside down, like, well, I think it's upside down, don't know. It's going in there like that. So we dry fit it or test fit it and make sure that goes in, and that fits in lovely and tight. There is a little bit of a gap, but we won't see that, I don't think. Yeah, it is actually stressing the part as it goes in, which suggests that it's slightly wide. So I'm just going to sand those edges. You can see it's just a little bit of a swipe, because if it's too stressed, it's going to pop out, and you want it to. You really want the part to sit where you want it to be, and then the gluing is almost an additional step. But there we go. That's not stressing the part now. So that's dry fitted. That goes in okay, but we've not cleaned this part up as yet. I've got flash on there as well. We just need to get rid of that. That's all pretty good actually. Right, so that's our first two parts. Now we do have some paint instructions for the side and a decal to go on. So for now, we'll just leave it as dry built up. So next thing is some pedals. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the parts for this page of steps, clean them up, and then I'll come back to you. just a little comment on removing parts for those of you new to the hobby. Don't be tempted with your sprue nippers, side cutters, whatever you want to call them. Don't be tempted to try and take the part cleanly off. It's the easiest way to cause problems for yourself. You can do all sorts of damage to the part that you can't see. It's just difficult to avoid nipping the part and things like that. And although you might be able to get away with it 9 times out of 10, the 1 time out of 10 that you damage the part, you create a load of work for yourself. So I always recommend removing the part, leaving plenty of sprue gate on the part, because it's easier to clean that part up once you've got it off your sprue. So as a general rule, I will cut as close to the sprue as possible and leave the gate on there, especially if they're thick gates, because you're much more likely to cause issues. So when you're cutting through the plastic, you're stressing the plastic, and if you're doing that closer to the part, then you're putting that stress in the part. And for very delicate parts, let's see if we've got one to hand. For very delicate parts, putting that stress on the part can cause it to bend, disform, snap even. So some people even use a razor saw to remove the sprue gates. I don't like doing that because of the stress you can put through the part doing that way as well. But there's more than one way of skinning cat, and it's personal preference. So I always cut well away, and sometimes I even cut that off, the part of the sprue off, so that I can get to cutting the sprue gate off easier on a cutting mat. And then when you've got it off, you can then nip a bit closer. And you're going to put less stress in the part when you've already removed it from the sprue, because it's got nothing to fight against. So when you're cutting through it and it's attached to the sprue, the part is tensioned within that sprue at the point it's being held, because it's being held in multiple directions. And as you cut through it, everything's fighting against that, because you're actually pushing that plastic apart. So to avoid all that, cut it well away, and then you can nip it a bit closer, or sand it clean when you're done. Even if you have nipped it close, just go over it with a sander, because they're not the best thing in the world for precision. Even if you've got a very good set of quality nippers like I have, I still don't consider them to be a precision tool. So there you go, that's my little tip there. So I've got all my parts removed, and I'm just going to work through cleaning them up. So as I've already said, I'll come back to you when that's done.
Hi, and thanks for watching. You can support the channel by hitting the like button, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you don't miss any content that I put out. Model Kit Stuff is a self-funded channel, and I don't do membership or Patreon or buy me a coffee. So if you'd like to further donate to the channel and ensure the cameras keep rolling and the content keeps coming, then you can consider making a donation through my PayPal. You will find a link to that in the text below. You enjoy your modelling, and I'll see you soon.